The Trillionaire Sheikh, whose security makes the FBI look useless. The FBI runs a $10 billion annual budget, 35,000 agents, global surveillance, top-tier encryption. But none of it, not a single protocol can penetrate his walls. Because this man, a sheikh from the Gulf, doesn't just have money, he has sovereignty. His palace costs $12 billion. His private vaults are protected by quantum encryption, air-gapped servers, and ex-CIA, MI6 and Mossad operatives on payroll. His enemies don't disappear. They never even get close enough to be considered enemies. And here's the terrifying part. He isn't hiding from the world. He built the world around his protection. Real-time market intelligence, geopolitical surveillance across 50 countries, countermeasures so advanced that even US black ops teams have studied and failed to copy his model. His financial empire spans tech, oil, media, real estate, and cyber defense. But his true power, he's turned wealth protection into a sovereign-level military operation. When the FBI investigated his assets in 2010, they hit a dead end, not due to lack of resources, but because the laws themselves bent to protect him. And while the richest pastors in America live tax-free, this man makes them look like charity cases. Because what you're about to see is how one man used unlimited wealth, unlimited tech, and unlimited state-level immunity to create a security apparatus so perfect, it terrifies governments. And at minute 11, you'll understand why even the FBI gave up. The FBI has rules, laws, oversight, budget caps. Even their most classified operations have to answer to someone. But the Trillionaire Sheikh, he answers to no one. His name rarely appears in headlines. But behind the scenes, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum operates a private security force so advanced, government agencies have tried and failed to copy it. Not 5 bodyguards, not 50, over 3,000 personnel, handpicked from elite units across the globe, ex-CIA field operatives, retired MI6 counterintelligence agents, Mossad tech specialists trained in psychological warfare, cyber analysts from top-secret Israeli, Emirati, and French programs. This isn't private security. This is a sovereign-level defense network, run like an elite paramilitary intelligence agency, one that exists outside of any government. Each recruit is vetted not just for loyalty, but for loyalty beyond price. They're flown into the UAE on sealed contracts, paid in crypto, trusts, and untouchable assets, bound not by law but by leverage. You don't leave this system, you disappear. And while most billionaires are surrounded by men with earpieces, the Sheikh is surrounded by men who've led coups, dismantled foreign governments, and infiltrated terrorist networks. The FBI tracks threats after they surface. This man's team neutralizes threats before they're even typed into a device. And that's just layer one, because when the Trillionaire Sheikh goes to sleep, there are 6 concentric circles around him, each one deadlier, smarter, and more loyal than the last. The National Security Agency has satellites, data farms, and algorithms trained to detect global threats. But they work under constitutional law, red tape, and diplomatic restraint. The Trillionaire Sheikh doesn't. He works under one rule: control everything before it controls you. His surveillance grid spans 50 countries, not theoretically, literally. Every phone call, every financial transfer, every immigration database from Europe to Southeast Asia is monitored not by governments, but by his private analysts. He built his own cyber command center in Abu Dhabi, air-gapped from global internet, with quantum encryption that changes patterns hourly, no fiber optic leaks, no backdoors. Everything is custom built, including the code, and it's not just defensive. This system runs predictive threat modeling, tracking not only known enemies, but behavioral anomalies in foreign governments, activist groups, media outlets, and even Wall Street. When new sanctions are passed, his team moves assets before the news breaks. When a hacker group targets Gulf infrastructure, his firewalls intercept the breach before the NSA is even alerted. And in when a joint U.S.-Korean task force tried to trace a $400 million crypto movement suspected to be linked to UAE royals, they found nothing. Why? Because the transaction was legally invisible, split across jurisdictions. obfuscated by shell entities, and executed by air-gapped, cold wallets stored in vaults that don't appear on any map. Even the FBI admitted we were chasing shadows. Nothing stuck. This isn't cyber defense. It's financial warfare run by a ghost state with limitless WUM. And you still haven't seen the next layer. You can't attack what the world depends on. And that's the Sheikh's greatest weapon. While the FBI arrests hackers and the CIA topples regimes, the Trillionaire Sheikh plays a smarter game. He embeds himself into the machinery of the global economy. You think of the UAE as oil, but behind the sand dunes and skyscrapers lies a spiderweb of assets tied to the Sheikh's shadow portfolio. Stakes in Amazon supply chains, real estate across Manhattan, London, and Singapore, infrastructure loans to African governments that keep their economies afloat, early investments in tech unicorns now powering US, cloud infrastructure. These aren't holdings, they're leverage points. He doesn't just own companies, he owns the back doors to governments. In 2020, when a European country considered freezing UAE assets over a diplomatic fallout, the warning came fast and silent pull. That trigger, and your airports, shipping lanes, and oil contracts go dark. They backed off in 24 hours. Because that's the trick. He doesn't hide from sanctions. He makes himself unsanctionable. Even American pension funds, yes. Your retirement money are tied up in sovereign wealth vehicles controlled by his network. You touch him, you collapse systems. This is why his security doesn't have to shoot. It just has to exist. And every year, it gets smarter, faster, and more essential. Even pastors living tax-free in Gulfstream jets can't replicate this. Because it's not about lifestyle, it's about infrastructure. But we're still not done. Most billionaires build mansions. The Trillionaire Sheikh built a kingdom of silence, one that watches, records, and responds before you even know you're being watched. His palace isn't just one. 7 million square feet of gold, marble, and diamonds. It's a living organism of surveillance and psychological warfare. From the moment a visitor steps inside, they're tracked by thermal imaging, gait recognition, and silent biometric scans. Not one security camera in sight, because the cameras are in the chandeliers, the mirrors, and even the floor tiles. Every door requires multi-factor authentication. Retina, voice, heat signature. If you breathe differently, the system knows. There are no physical keys. Every lock is algorithmic, randomized hourly. Even his staff can't enter the same room twice without dynamic clearance codes. And that's just for humans. The building is outfitted with AI-driven defense systems. Ceiling-mounted drones on standby. Walls that deflect acoustic surveillance. Panic tunnels with 3D mapped escape trajectories. If you think this sounds excessive, remember, this isn't to impress, it's to terrify. A former Western diplomat who toured the estate under tight protocol described it as a palace designed by a Bond villain with the God complex and the budget to make it real. But the real genius, the palace doesn't just protect the Sheikh, it protects the idea of him. Everything from the architecture to the scent in the air is curated to disarm your ego and remind you you are not in power here. And yet, this is still surface level. If the FBI froze your bank accounts tomorrow, how much would you really have? Now ask that a question about the Trillionaire Sheikh, and the answer is terrifying. Nothing and everything at the same time, because his true wealth isn't on paper. It isn't even in crypto. It's in illusion, layered across 40 jurisdictions, thousands of shell companies, and legal paradoxes designed to outlive regulation. Each asset you think he owns has 3 holding companies, 2 offshore trusts, and at least 1 diplomatic shield. His Manhattan real estate, technically owned by a cultural nonprofit in Liechtenstein. His jets registered to a leasing firm headquartered in the Cayman Islands. His art collection held in a foundation that doesn't legally acknowledge his existence. Even the FBI, in a declassified 2020 report, admitted tracing his holdings is like chasing smoke in a house of mirrors. This isn't tax evasion, it's sovereign-level obfuscation. By the time authorities find a financial trail, He's already built 5 more, not to hide, but to make pursuit meaningless. Because even if you seize one of his assets, it doesn't stop the money, it doesn't stop the protection, it doesn't stop the network. That's the point. He doesn't own things. He owns systems that own things on his behalf. And you can't prosecute a system, especially when it exists across 5 continents and speaks through lawyers trained in 4 languages. You can freeze assets. You can expose offshore accounts. You can even issue sanctions. But what do you do when the man you're targeting is more useful alive than punished? That's the final layer of the Trillionaire Sheikh's security system. He made himself indispensable to oil, to diplomacy, to Western stability. The Sheikh's royal family doesn't just control billions in assets, they control access to Middle Eastern airspace, to anti-terror intelligence, to energy corridors that keep Europe warm and Wall Street calm. If you move against him, you don't just attack a man, you jeopardize treaties, pipelines, arms deals, and counter-terror alliances. Even religion becomes a shield. The Sheikh's position as a spiritual patron in the Gulf lends him cultural legitimacy no Western court dares question. His public persona, polished, progressive, philanthropic. Behind the scenes, he funds lobbying arms in Washington, maintains undisclosed stakes in media conglomerates, and cultivates ties with political families on both sides of the aisle. He doesn't need your loyalty, he just needs your silence, and he buys it wholesale. One Western intelligence official put it bluntly, he's not a threat, he's a necessity, and that's more dangerous because when a man becomes so essential to the world order that he cannot be held accountable, he's not protected by walls or weapons anymore. He's protected by fear of what would happen without him. And that's the moment when even the FBI steps back. In the payoff, we'll show you why this sheikh didn't just outbuild the system, he replaced it. And why every billionaire on Earth now studies his blueprint. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about oil. This wasn't even about power. The Trillionaire Sheikh built something more dangerous. An identity so essential to global stability, no one can touch him. Governments study his defense systems. Billionaires copy his legal structures. Intelligence agencies analyze his networks and still fail to map them. He doesn't live behind gates. He is the gate. His protection isn't security guards or bulletproof glass. It's fear-based diplomacy, legal ambiguity, and digital omniscience. He didn't just escape the system, he became the operating system. And now every new royal, every Silicon Valley titan, every megachurch pastor trying to dodge taxes, they don't look at Jeff Bezos, they don't look at Putin, they look at him. Because in a world where wealth is vulnerable, and exposure is lethal. He proved one thing: the safest place to hide is in plain sight, as the man no one dares confront. So tell us, if the FBI can't touch him, who can? Drop your thoughts below and let us know which untouchable empire should we expose next.